Playing senses into food, food can be looked at as a performance. There are a few things to take into consideration with the performance. To perform is to do. To perform is to behave. And to perform is to show. The to-do is making the food and serving it. The behavior is to behave appropriately in relation to food during production, consumption, or disposal. For example, having and following sanitation codes, liquor licenses, etc. When it comes to food being visual and not meant to be eaten, a stylist will do everything in their power to show invisible sensory experiences or to provide visual cues for taste and smells. Stylists will do insane things that no one would imagine. For example, a stylist may use glue to replicate milk and stringy cheese on camera, or a dish soap to give a beer that extra foam on top. They do this to make the foods look more appealing to consumers, so they crave these products and may wish to buy them in the near future. As it happens, taste is only one of the many ways we experience food. We also experience it with our eyes, ears, and nose. When tasting food, the flavor and texture are both equally important. Everyone experiences taste a little differently, which is why people have so many different food preferences. When it comes to eating, there's another body of work that takes place in the alimentary canal proper, from the mouth to the viscera and out through the anus. Our experiences aestheticized through cuisine, wine, and gastronomy are associated with the mouth, throat, and nasal cavities. Food inside the mouth cavity has been historically understood in terms of science, medicine, and religion. Also, specific practices have been associated with them, such as dissection, surgery, spiritual discipline, and moral order. When an artist enters the alimentary canal, they first visualize the inside of the body, then externalize it by presenting substances suggestive of it, and finally project photographs and videos of the body's interior. For example, Anne Hamilton's untitled Mouth/Stones consists of a very small television monitor showing the moving image of the mouth. However, some artists violently disrupt the autonomic nervous system, which regulates the involuntary activity of vital organs, including the intestines. The materiality of food is a powerful performance medium because of its dynamic and unstable character, its precarious position between sustenance and garbage, its relationship to the mouth and the rest of the body, particularly the female body, and its importance to the community. Food and the processes associated with it are performance art. Rather than a permanent work that can enter the art market, artists are attracted to the phenomenal raw experience or toward the social bias toward a participatory art experience or process. Artists will gravitate towards materials that are not usually associated with fine art practices and attend to those materials. The Arthur Avenue Retail Market project is amazing. Between November 1995 and November 1997, the Arthur Avenue Retail Market project was designed by Lanzalotto and located in a once vibrant Italian neighborhood in the Bronx. Lanzillo stood up against the system of the downtown artist communities and the values that prevent working with family, the commercialism of the art world, and the anesthetized art audience. Lanzalotto challenged himself and gave challenges to other artists by simply telling them to go home. This made people stop to think, ask themselves questions, and gain new ways of thinking. This was made to challenge people to do their own work by operating with the mentalities that they ran away from in their development. Lanzalotto set up shop in the market to make an opera in the market, pointing out that opera is represented in day-to-day life. A performer must know how to communicate well with clients. Hence, these merchants are the best performers and storytellers in the world. One of Lanzillo's most notable performances was How to Cook a Heart. Lanzalotto's formula of creative examination is to build the pairings and trios of artists, merchants, and shoppers. On several occasions, special buses brought visitors from other parts of the city. The market also went to Manhattan. To recreate the market at the Guggenheim Museum, Lanzalotto cooperated with 20 community staff so that everyone can view the performance. The concept of the Garden of Eden and the Last Supper have had a huge influence on food as an art form. In particular, artists create gardens for people to experience landscapes and edible plants like ramps and sprouts that mean so much to individuals and cultures. Gardens as a metaphor have represented history and culture, women's performance art, and spatial relationships. One man in particular, Mark Thompson, made a live-in hive where he would live with his head in a chamber of swarming bees. His point wasn't to create body art. He wanted to live with the bees. Culture is a kitchen. What does that mean? The raw and cooked are conceptual categories. For example, sashimi is cooked by the knife, not fire, meaning the knife has cooked the raw fish by converting it from nature to culture within a culinary system. The cooked can be known as raw in recipes that call for prepared packaged foods. For example, the pink champagne cake calls for white cake mix, instant pistachio pudding, club soda, a jar of red cherries, a tin of crushed pineapple, margarine, cream cheese, and, for added color, bottled red and green cherries. At the heart of preparation is the notion of meaning with a strong presence. Some of these activities and events are standard practices, while others are incredibly social and symbolic, sometimes moving toward the theatrical. In contrast, others still focus on substance, its materiality, and sensory qualities. The way we learn to cook food is a performance in and of itself. Recipes in books aren't just instructions on a piece of paper. They are a form of art. More noticeably, though, cooking shows are a performance for an audience. Whether they're like the Nancy Barber series that focused on how people made food without added frills like audience connection, or more like Julia Child's cooking shows, the way people performed cooking instruction on television is art. Food is also used as a work of art. Certain exhibitions have featured food as art, sometimes as tasty interactive art, and a wedding once featured a food representation of the bride and groom instead of a traditional cake. Above that, though, is the fact that food brings people together. Dinner parties become artistic outlets for women who otherwise never had their cooking recognized, an important piece of women's cultural history. Food is restricted from art in some circumstances, but paired with it in others. For example, you may not eat in a library, but you would in a movie theater. We like to think of food as simply a source of sustenance, but it can be so much more than that. Food may be the only necessity for survival that allows people to have so much fun, be so creative, and take so much joy out of their day-to-day lives.